I'm the new video engineer for the school, the whole department, so Lyle and I are gonna be doing some mixed stuff, but for the most part I'll focus primarily on the video. We worked over the last couple of weeks on Studio 3. We've made a few changes, some of which are very apparent, some of which aren't quite so obvious. We're hoping you're going to like all of them. The big one you'll notice is we put 2 new speakers in. That means that those are actually pulling from the audio board, which can feed either the playback or the live sound, so that you're not forced to boot up the whole system, but it also allows you to play back any recordings you made on those speakers. If you don't want to do that, this monitor here is now pulling a direct audio and video feed directly from the recorder, so that if you pump up the volume on this guy, you're going to see the audio and video coming straight out of the deck. That gives the option of just replaying something without blasting the whole room and just checking your audio, or it also just gives you the option to look at something without having to mess with the audio board at all.
So what we see here was always what I went by as to what is getting recorded audio and video, so that's the same as what this will be?
Yes.
Got it.
You don't have the audio bars, so you don't see the levels, but you can hear them. So as with any audio recording, you want to listen to it so you're not just recording static, you're actually recording voices and all that. That then comes over here. I'll let Lyle talk about the audio board because I don't want to take up too much of his stuff. But we left pretty much everything else intact with a few exceptions. You will notice that the complicated power bank here has been removed. It was nice, but it required too many buttons to be pressed in a very specific order, and well, I don't think the equipment actually needed the delayed startup routines. So we just swapped it out for an on-off, very clearly labeled. So on is up, off is down. We have updated the firmware on the switcher and the Proton control surface. Those have been up, operational with 0 issues since I did the firmware update over a week ago. So we are crossing our fingers that that actually has solved the issue.
What is firmware? That's the software that's going to run?
That is firmware that is installed on a device that can't be accessed through a user interface. So basically you use some software. It just runs the stuff inside that you don't have
mess
to
with. Or
yes.
Okay.
It just tells the components inside how to talk to each other.
Got it. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you.
For the most part, you guys won't have to deal with any of that. Of course, just it's got the same issues of don't change the IPs and all that. That won't change with this stuff. But it has been fully operational for a couple, almost 2 weeks now. So we're
Longer than it has been.
yeah.
To be fair, there hasn't been 3 of us messing with it.
Or lots of students.
Yes. In that, keeping it in mind that we are concerned that that might fail, I didn't get rid of the workstation that you guys had just to the right. I'm moving it back here. That's going to give you a little bit more space up front for students. And the little computer I have here is going to replace a test machine, but it's going to live up here. And so you can turn it on, and that way the CG computer that you guys were using isn't going to double as the control surface if this fails. That way you can still run the CG at the same time that somebody's switching. Otherwise, as you two have probably, or all of you have noticed, that doesn't work very well. So that'll separate those things out. The teleprompter at the end, we haven't touched it. It worked last time I turned it on, so we'll do a full test with it before the semester starts next week. One big thing about the record deck that I want to go over is I dropped down the recording bitrate to ProRes proxy. Unless somebody feels that you guys need full ProRes, the smaller file sizes will probably benefit you guys. And I think a few of you have mentioned they shouldn't be using the stuff they shoot here in their reels by the time they leave anyway. So,
Is there, can I just ask really
Yeah.
quickly, because we had talked about that before, is there a way that can accidentally get changed or bumped? You know, if a student is pushing buttons?
so you got display over here,
Okay.
that brings up the menu. Using the dial
Okay.
here, you've got two things, format SSD, which I'm gonna go over in a minute,
Okay,
and if you go to record, use set to select it,
okay,
you can then pick what codec you're doing, so set again, and we're at the bottom, almost at the bottom, you've got the DNX HDs at the very bottom, but ProRes proxy, uncompressed 10-bit is probably a little higher than you guys wanna deal with. But ProRes proxy at 35 megabits per second is actually the same bit rate that those cameras down there record at internally, which was a broadcast standard some 10 years ago, so it's not like that's gonna be unacceptable to most broadcast stations anyway. It's not ideal if you're doing post-production green screen, but I suspect it's a lot better than what people have been doing for quite a while. If you want to do like cinema grade post-production, bump it up to full ProRes or 422, and you'll have more than enough color space to get a perfect green screen out of it. One other thing, if we go back, let's see, just hit display again, and it'll get you back to the base menu. We're going to go over to format SSD, and this is where we would format the SSD. One of the things people have complained about in my past has been hard drives freezing up the machine or failing or just getting too full. One of the issues with these things is that if you delete files using a computer but you don't reformat the disk entirely, it can build up errors, and that will freeze up the machine, or you will lose information, files, that sort of thing. I highly recommend that you reformat the disk every time you use it. If that works into your plans, great, but at least every couple of weeks, try and reformat it.
Well, I tell students that, so my car has 500 gigs, and I say, I'll hold on to all your projects till the end of the semester and then clear it off. So you're saying not do that, so every couple weeks, dump it on something else, and then...
What I've done is I've gotten a hard drive. I just went and just bought one myself, and I dump their files off onto my hard drive, so I can keep their files, but then I can format the solid state drive.
Clear it off.
You guys are probably the fundamentals as far as getting the students into proper data management habits. You guys have heard the 3-2-1 backup solution. 3 places, 2 locations, 1 offsite. So you always want 3 copies of whatever data you have.
Does
I'm
YouTube count
just
as
thinking of all my
offsite?
data that.
Yes, it does.
Oh, it does? Okay, there you go.
Yeah, so 3 copies.
You did that? Okay.
Location, even one.
Hopefully nothing happens to
Offsite.
YouTube.
Offsite.
Let's agree on a policy regarding the SSD that gets left in the machine, because this could be
Yeah.
problematic with some of you who might not be able to copy it over, and you forgot your own personal SSD, and you had to use the one. There should always be one left in there,
Yeah.
right? So if we reformat it before every class, then that might have some impact
Yeah.
on the previous class, who didn't get a chance to dump the media. So, I don't think we need to, I think we need to decide what actually is gonna work for all of you. I don't think we need to come up with anything that is, a right way or a wrong way. It's just everyone needs to be on the same page.
Totally. So maybe
Yeah.
with this one, we just don't touch the one that's in here during the
And
semester.
and make an assumption that if you, that we'll just leave everything on there, so if you use
Right,
it,
that's what I
we'll
mean.
just leave everything on there, and at the end of every semester, we'll reformat
Yeah.
it. So if you have something on there, you just be sure that you get it off
At the end
the
of
last
class.
week of the semester,
Yeah.
yeah.
How much do you guys record during your classes?
I have anywhere between 20 to 30 students, and between 2 recording days for those students will record between 20 to 30 projects that range from 1 minute to 5 minutes.
Okay, so a couple of hours every couple weeks, is that true? Okay.
And by going down to ProRes proxy, you'll have that much more space. Full ProRes, which is what it was currently set at, is 150 megabits per second, roughly. And ProRes proxy is 35 to 45. So that gives you 3 times as much.
Which means that the files also transfer to students faster.
Oh my god,
Yes.
yeah. I've been in transfer.
Do you guys normally have your students transfer files at the end of class or something?
Some do. Not all of them want to do it, everybody.
I've had to tell them to come during my office hours because some of the files take so long that I just can't wait here after class that
Gotcha.
long.
Maybe this will change that.
I hope so.
Yeah.
We had the
I also
very-
hope this means that we can share them via the cloud.
Well, that's what, yeah, so that's what I tried to do this semester, and it just, I mean, I actually need your help later if you have time.
Yeah, so the 2 things that are gonna help you guys transfer files the fastest is making sure that we're using a USB 3.0 computer, because 2 is gonna be really slow.
You got an extra $2,500 for a new laptop.
What we can do is we can locate a few computers. I know the edit labs should be good enough for that,
For a while.
and so those computers should be able to transfer files.
USB 3.0?
3.0.
Does that look different? Does
How old
the-
is your computer?
If it has a, if
If it's
the
a-
USB port is physically blue, that is almost always an indication that it's 3.0 or better. Otherwise, SS for super speed is usually another indication.
You can usually go in you do that for the Apples, you go into the Apple menu and do the About your computer, and then it'll give you more of a report up in the Apple
And
menu.
so nothing in the lab is 3.0.
Nothing. None of the good edit suites or anything.
There is no good edit suites. There's
Okay, question.
there is one 4K edit suite which is still sitting on my desk, and, and that'll obviously be 3.0 and faster. But all those iMacs and PCs up in 200, as well as in 40 and 44, are not 3.0.
Question.
Alright.
So, normally we just use this box right here to
So
transfer
what that means
files.
is, I mean,
So either I have my
USB
students
regular
bring in their
USB
laptop
2.0
and
is
whatever
really old.
plugs into
Okay.
that and works is what they use.
USB 3.
Would it be possible to use that machine as like a transfer station that's already in here?
Yes, the machine is gonna be USB 2, so it will be slow.
The internet is so fast.
It's one option. This is the machine that's gonna be here. It unfortunately does not have an eSATA port. Sometimes you can find a machine with an eSATA port that'll, it's not quite 3.0, but it's faster. But yeah, proper file backup is definitely something you want to encourage the students to do, which is save the files. If they do not have possession, they do not have a right to complain if it disappears. And that really should be something that the students need to pick up as soon as possible, because I've been on too many productions where, where's the files from this production we shot last week? I think they're still on the cards.
Yeah.
Those cards just went out on another shoot. And so you're then scrambling, calling, hoping that they didn't get reformatted or something. So I consider any SSD or recording media temporary at best. Files need to be pulled off within a preferred offload time. That's up to you guys to decide. I recommend it's within the scope of that day's production. So all files are off by the end of the day. If that works for you guys, great. If not, work amongst yourselves to.
So they all have their own personal SSDs. And can we assume that that one that stays in the recorder is just a backup
Yes.
for emergency, and that they're really, it shouldn't really even get that full, because you're only using it in an emergency.
Yeah.
You forgot your SSD or
Yeah. You know, tangentially, and since we have, because you're teaching 240, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's something I never learned in the department, was data management. I think
Mhm.
it's something that you just kind of infer from other people. So it'd be something kind of worthwhile.
It's like teaching people how to clean their room.
Kinda, but otherwise, you know.
You can
don't
say it.
know.
Yeah.
Right.
But some of the editing classes
you have kids.
Yeah, I'm saying the same thing 1,000 times a day, and it
Yeah, I
doesn't
can't
work.
imagine that the editing
But
classes
I agree.
Oh,
do that.
Wayneck or.
I I agree. I can potentially, maybe when I go through digital video editing in class, we can talk a little bit about that, just in terms of, I mean, like, it took me a very long time to figure out, like, naming conventions and things like that for files, so I could actually find things that I worked on and stuff. But anyway, yeah, I can go through that kind of stuff. So we take a week in Studio One. I don't go through and delete stuff every week, but basically anything that's more than 1 week old is fair game. So I'm just like,
well, in the beginning editing, they do that, or at least they should. That's probably
to delete stuff. You mean, or to do the
management, media management.
Are you guys coming to the retreat on Friday?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could bring it up during the curriculum discussion. Us lecturers
Good luck.
don't have a say.
Are we still rolling?
Yes, it was pointed right at
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Alright, so, we'll just finish off with this thing. So, we still have the intercom port here, XLR to a box. The boxes are obviously down in the box
Can I say
cabinet.
something? Is it okay with everyone that there's a really short HDMI cable, or not HDMI,
XLR.
XLR cable, that can we just say that that's just gonna live
Absolutely.
in here this semester with the short XLR and the box, and then that way we don't have to worry about bringing it up and down. And then the headsets, can the headsets just live in the control room too?
And I think you guys got us some extra headsets, right? I know maybe we're jumping ahead, but
That was probably before me.
Yeah, I got extra headsets, but they weren't specific for this room. I think most of them went in Studio 2.
Lyle and I did go through all the headsets and boxes. We left, I think, 3 or 4 here that are fully functional. We took all the rest of them out, and we'll probably go through the other 2 studios and do the same thing, so that there is a minimum number of functional headsets here.
We're distributed. Communism.
So we'll know if they're broken because we already tested them all.
I guess, I know you guys are the same way, and we usually just have we've been limited to having a floor manager who's only person with a headset down there, which is usually fine for most of the production, but it'd be nice to have the option of having somebody on camera with a headset too.
We were assuming that you'd have 2 camera operators, and 1 operator could double as the floor director
Yeah.
if needed.
Okay.
That way you've got that. So we've got the intercom here. We can probably label one of the cables. I believe it's been policy to leave all XLR intercom boxes and headsets in the closet down there. So we should probably stick to that for the time being. So we can label that one cable so that it stays as this dedicated one, but it just will go and sit back down there at the end of the classes.
Wait, so I'm sorry. So the one that's going to live in here won't live in here. We're going to take it down to
It'll live down there, but it'll be labeled so that you know exactly
Bring it
which
out.
one to bring back out here.
I was trying to skip the step of having to go and get it because
Me too.
as an instructor, just thinking through when I get to my class and having to set everything up for my students, considering that my students are usually late to class, especially on production days, I'm the one that's setting things up in here, and I can either have somebody bring up headsets and then have that one student go back and forth and get one headset at a time because they don't understand my instruction, or I can just go and get all the headsets and set it up. So for me, leaving the headsets and the box in here just skips the step of me having to go downstairs and get it all and set it up.
I'm going to suggest, in the interest of consistency, all the other studios are the same.
Okay.
The headsets and boxes get left in the lockers. It's a security thing, and also I notice when stuff like even simple stuff like remote controls get left on counters, they somehow end up in places where you're not expecting to find them.
Alright, how about
So-
as a intermediate option, we have a box labeled control room equipment. And then all the student has to do is go down once, grab the box that's control room equipment, bring that back up, and that's got all the control room equipment, remotes,
That would make it
cables.
a lot simpler.
Alright,
Thank you.
so we'll find some sort of box. Might be an Amazon box, but to start with, we'll get to something a little bit better. But that way it's just one trip down. It's really obvious, hopefully, and they'll bring it back. Students, yeah. Alright, the Ethernet port here is probably gonna get disabled, cause that's gonna have to be for this other computer. Wi-Fi, I guess, still works down here, cause my phone keeps giving me updates. So the laptop plug, intercom, the lamp won't work because it was pulling from the old power supply. I'll have to find another solution to that, but
Did any of us
Anyone
ever
use
use
it?
it?
Well, I would have liked to have one, but my director usually sits right there. Yeah.
okay.
Is
And
there,
those
a,
for
is,
just like reading,
is there a USB on anything? Because I have a bunch of little gooseneck USB lamps that we can.
I'm sure
If there's any USB port,
I think these usually have one in the back that you might be able to see the screen. I don't
Yeah.
know how long it is.
I know
Well,
those
or even the
displays.
keyboard.
Yeah.
You can just plug them into the if there's a USB connection.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
But I
And
mean,
so-
I know these
Yeah.
screens used to at least have a bunch on the back. So.
Alright, well, that sounds like another solution.
Yeah, but they're like I said, they're goosenecks, so they're this long. You know, so I don't know, they're not far enough to go from behind the screen. Well,
But
we
you
can
put
just
it
use
down,
a cable.
You could put it down there so the
Well,
director can read the script. I
If
think,
it
right?
came,
Yeah, right,
if it came to it, we can just use a USB extension cable with the wall wart
right.
and just plug the wall wart in the back, USB, and it just sits here and just comes over. I'm sure we can figure, USB sounds like a great option.
Yeah, we've got
But
a
again, it's
bunch
okay
of
that
those.
we not on this one, but on that one, because the problem is that we have the director plugs into this intercom so they can record. I'm sorry, the assistant, the AD, and then the director. The only other place for the director to plug in their intercom is right there.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So then
it's a
the
little like
director's the one that would be using the light.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense for them to
Okay.
switch to the phone and on off.
yeah.
Alright, so I thought I'll just look around and see if I can't find a desk lamp or something else that's appropriate.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this thing, I did not change any of the configuration on this, so you've still got the cameras over on the right, laptop on the left, CG 1, 2, 3, and then the router.
Can I make one request?
Sure.
I don't know how hard or easy it is. Can you designate one for black?
You would like the left side to be black?
Or just
one
I
of
think
these
one
to
of
be
one
black.
of them to be just labeled black. I know it already is black,
Okay.
but it just doesn't have it labeled on there like the cameras do.
Okay. I can see what that would take, and it shouldn't be difficult.
Okay.
I know it's definitely got that option.
Yeah.
So just, it's a matter of getting into the switcher control panel, rerouting it, and making sure this thing doesn't need to get too much updates. Yeah, that should be easy enough. Yeah, so I've done all the tests on that, seems to work. This thing's working just fine. Let's see, I don't think there were any others.
Do all the components go through the Black Magic? Is that the? Cause do you have to ever repatch any of that? Because we used to have to, and sometimes it would be berserk, and you'd have to repatch to get cameras to run
I have not
Black Magic.
noticed any issue needing repatching.
to that. Okay.
At least
so
in
it's
the
all would be off the Proton.
Uh,
Patch, if we had to do that, if in case cameras got screwed up and it came in, and I'm like, why aren't the cameras
the
on?
only reason that a camera might not come through properly is the Blackmagic switcher. You have to set the switcher up to be a specific resolution and frame rate. So 1080 interlaced 60 frames per second. All cameras have to be set to the same thing. So as long as the cameras don't change and whatever source you're plugging in, say the BYOD laptop, as long as they're all coming in properly, it should show up. But that's a matter of the source being the correct format.
That's what I'm asking. So off Proton, the source is where you could switch to have, say, camera 1, 2, and 3. We're gonna all agree that we're always gonna live on this.
That can be moved around. That was how, I guess, Michelle had set that up.
Well, sometimes I had to go over here and like repatch to try to get the camera to come through the system and go to here, and I
So
think that's
that's
all.
gone.
That's wiped
That's-
away. Got
it's
it.
gone.
That's what I want to
It's
know.
gone.
Okay, thank you.
I was never aware of that,
There was
so.
different sources that we would have to pull in, so we had to
Was that a
assign.
long bar, sync
Yeah.
or is this?
Yes, we had to assign
Okay.
what camera was what source, so that the Proton knew what source we were pulling from.
Okay, I
But
know
that's
what's going on
completely
now.
gone.
And that's all the way gone.
That's in my office. I wasn't sure where we were going to reinsert that. So
Let's
Don't,
not.
you don't have to. That was
Let's
horrible.
set it on
Okay.
fire.
Was
You
that,
guys-
that wasn't last semester, it was the one before?
Yeah.
well, that would require an additional Ethernet port anyway, and we're out, so that's not coming back in here.
Cool.
So no problem there.
Happy.
There was a camera last semester that stopped zooming.
Stop zooming. All right.
Yeah, probably there's a servo switch on the front of all those cameras, and if the servo is off, then it will only zoom manually. So you just look at the front of the camera, you'll see a little toggle switch.
It was just an issue that persisted all semester.
Somebody probably switched it off,
Somebody probably touched something.
and nobody knew how to turn it back on.
Yeah, so if you, the hand controller, on the bottom of it, it's manual or servo. Just make sure it's on servo. Yeah, it's
It's spelled S-E-R-V.
normal spelling.
What's the
of it.
router?
Yeah.
What's the router input here?
The route.
The router input, like what actually
Oh,
comes in?
that
on
would be, I don't know what that is, that was there and I haven't touched it, I assume it's from up top.
Yeah, there is, yes. But I think Lyle and I, when we were going through and trying to check the picture, we were noticing that it seemed like it was either bypassed or it wasn't functioning properly. Cause it's actually supposed to feed the switcher desk in Studio One as well.
Could it be the Holloway connection?
It may be that the Holloway connection is connected to the router, but I'm not entirely sure. The way that we were able to get the picture up here was actually patching directly from the cameras, not through any of the Blackmagic switcher or whatever, and bypassing the router, and actually going directly into the mix.
So
desk.
that's probably,
The switch
that's gonna
desk.
be one of my next, to-dos,
Right.
is to go through that,
See what
mini
that
hub
is.
router that got put in up there.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
would have loved if you had gotten a bigger one, but that's a non-issue at this point.
Right.
Can't do anything. But I'm betting that that router has a destination for each of the studios and a source for each of the studios. So
Right.
it's both pulling the program from every studio, and it can also send that back out to each one.
Yeah.
It's got 16 in, so it may also include the cameras for each studio as well.
Yeah.
I have not looked at that one yet, but that would be my bet.
Okay.
And there is that Blackmagic panel that you didn't like here. There's one of those in the cage, and there's another one in my office, and it's just a matter of.
Active. You mean here? So everything goes through those two in the cage in your office?
No, it's in my office on a shelf.
Oh,
It's,
okay.
that's probably something else to look at some point, but it simply goes into the router, and the router would allow you to just route it wherever you want.
Is your office the old Michelle office?
Yes.
Yeah, right off the, okay.
Next to Studio 2.
Mhm.
So the router, I'll take a look at that next. I guess laptop, that's obviously the BYOD input. Auxiliary 1, I haven't played with that any. So unless you guys use that,
Which one, I'm sorry?
Auxiliary 1.
No.
What would we use it for, just like?
You do plug in for something you wanna show on screen, or maybe you have a iPad or something?
A video.
Different than the
Video.
different than the
Video
computer,
player.
or no?
It's nothing
Yeah,
there.
so
Everything
like,
in the laptop.
so during anchor copy, for example, our students could cut to a clip of something.
But that would be different than the laptop.
That
What
would be
about would it be
So it's
useful
nothing now,
to you
it could be
guys
something like
Okay.
that.
to have? I know for Studio One of the things that helped us, especially when we were preparing, was to be able to include the teleprompter as a source. Because actually, it was kind of nice. It was useful to have it actually displayed up there. Like for instance, when we were doing,
Well, we
I would do
have
auditions and stuff like that, and then we would see as they were reading, we would look at the teleprompter.
The director too
We-
can kinda refer.
We have the little auxiliary screen down here.
Yes.
Right there, so we can follow along on the teleprompter.
Oh, you're talking about this screen, or are you talking about?
No, no, just right down here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Okay.
Although it would be interesting to see it roll, I mean, it's not a big deal, but it'd be interesting to see it rolling.
That it was useful for us for that, but. So.
If we were to do that, I'd probably do that as a second monitor, and just duplicating the little monitor there in a larger, say, 24-inch monitor somewhere in the room. But that's gonna be an additional TV,
Right.
which, if one of you guys wants to request that. All right.
So the monitor controls in here for the audio. Oh, you're gonna say Lyle was gonna.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
So the audio board over here, we've swapped out the old one for the Mackie. That gives you some sub outputs, which are useful for things. But the main thing is we set it up so that there's one of the buttons up here. It'll alternate between the main mix being monitored here and the deck, which is routed back into the board.
Okay.
And that is also can be routed to the speakers. So the idea being that you can simply toggle the button and it will either give you live directly from the studio on these monitors, or it's going to give you the playback. Of course, during a live production, monitoring either would be just fine because playback will be playback, and the live mix will be it's the same thing. It's just a matter of where in the line it's being monitored.
Yay! Okay, so this is control room operations for Studio 3. We're just going to go over a few of the audio pieces of audio equipment that are been newly installed or upgraded here. So we've changed the console here to a Mackie. This is a 16-channel mic. We've got mic preamps, and we also have all of our inputs from here. Everything's running through this board. The major improvement that we have now is that we can now play back video from the HyperDeck and listen to the audio in both on the monitor screen there that has speakers embedded in it, as well as you can hear the playback through these two monitor speakers that we installed. So, do we have anything recorded on HyperDeck?
Unless you guys erased it, there should be.
Punched in all the way.
I just gotta get it first.
And that's all there really is to it.
That's off, so we can hear.
So that's coming off that card?
So that's coming off of the HyperDeck. So that audio is coming off the HyperDeck, and it is going through this de-embedder. So what this is doing is it's stripping the audio off the digital output, and it's taking analog inputs and it's coming right back into the board. So in order to hear that, we have to have our control room level up. So it's hard to see here.
Well, sorry, HyperDeck means...
HyperDeck is the Blackmagic recording deck. So this is
the hard drive in there, or
the hard drive.
Is it coming off the card, or is it in the?
It's coming off this hard drive.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Okay, so we're pulling back off the hard drive. We don't have signal underneath that. Sorry. And so you have VU meters here, and that indicates that it's playing back. So you should have signal. And that output is coming directly into this box right here, and that box is basically taking that digital signal and it's stripping off the audio only and running it as an analog signal. So that's going back into this board, and in order to hear that, you have to switch. There's the control room return right here.
And that is how it's labeled.
I will label it. I haven't changed that labeling yet. We should be hearing something.
I'm gonna get this wrong, but what Lyle said, one of the reasons that we had issues with audio was that after it came to the board, it actually went up into the cage. The audio signal went up into the cage before it came back down to the recorder. Did I get that right?
Yeah, it was going through the monitoring that was in here, going up to the cage, coming back down to the cage, and then it was being de-embedded, and that's why we were having a problem.
So that's no more.
Yes, I should.
So currently we can't hear the audio just because the monitor is turned off.
Well, I turned off that monitor because I wanted to make sure that we were hearing it through that monitor and not through this monitor. So now you can hear it.
Yep, that's more than enough.
Both through this monitor and then.
Sounds good.
The reason why we couldn't hear it before is we're taking a loop out of that monitor. That's why. So that monitor has to be on. The TV monitor has to be on. And then you can play your audio through this box, and then it's coming into here, and then there's a knob here that says control room volume. So
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just to make sure partially that I'm understanding. So
Yeah.
let's say my students and I are recording a project.
Right.
In order to ensure that we're actually recording the audio,
Right.
rather than have it feed live off of the board
Right.
into the speakers, it
Right.
makes more sense to have it come off from the monitor.
Right.
Because Mark mentioned that you guys didn't notice any delay,
Right.
and then that way, if I hear the audio coming off from the monitor,
Right.
that means that it is being recorded.
Right, so basically what I would recommend for all of your classes, even if you don't have a whole lot of time, is to do a test record. Once you get everything all set up, it could be like just 2 minutes, whatever, 30 seconds, test record. Put the drive in here, get your input set up over there so your cameras are rolling, and then record and make sure you've got VU meters, moving here, and that you're recording. And then when you do your playback, you'll be able to see it right here and hear it right here, and then you'll know for a fact, okay, we have audio. Because the problem we were having in the past is we had meters here, we had meters here, and we recorded, and then when we played back the files, there's no audio on it. So this way we know, you do your 30-second test record every class, we know it's recorded. So if it's not recorded, then there's a problem with the hyperdeck, or there's some other issue we have to address.
Were you guys watching those VU meters that you were? Okay,
Yeah, that's the problem with this deck, is that there's no dedicated headphone output for this deck, so you can't just plug a pair of headphones and go, oh, okay, I can verify it. That's why I set up the playback system the way it is, so that you can hear. You can definitely hear. There's a difference between what's going on live on the floor and what's happening from your playback.
So a standard practice would be to toggle between the
to
two.
make sure that when you're checking levels, when you're doing an audio balance, is to check it on there.
Watch
Partially
it.
because the old board didn't give you audio levels at all,
Oh,
so
it did?
it didn't for me.
Well, wasn't honest. I don't know if it was.
Yeah.
You may not
To
have gone
play
to the
for
board.
playback, it was not hooked up in a way that you could play back your audio and play it through the audio system. In
Right.
addition to that, there was no audio monitors.
When
There
you
was just a little
when you're
thing.
doing your audio check, I would check on the master.
Okay.
That little
So-
window,
Yeah.
Which one? The one with
Small.
that one right there.
Yep.
Okay.
This
So that
is-
instead of looking here, you would.
That's what I
balance
would.
But this
But
is-
only because I just didn't believe the board.
Okay.
And
But what this is this is indicating it coming into. You can also test by plugging headphones in here, but that indicates that there's audio coming to the switcher, and then the switcher is embedding it into SDI, and then through SDI it's recording it onto the hyperdeck. But that, just because it's coming here doesn't mean it's going onto the deck. So you want to look for meters here, and you also want to listen to it while it's being recorded, and you want to do a test.
Listen to it on there. While it's
Yes.
being
Out of the
recorded.
monitor,
Yeah.
out of this monitor.
Yeah. So
Listen to it
whatever,
on. Okay.
whatever's up here is coming off this deck. So
So where it says master, that is just the input going into the switchboard, into the switcher, into Blackmagic, and then Blackmagic is taking that information, it's writing it onto the solid state drive, and so then what you're seeing on where the bars are is what has been recorded.
Recorded, right.
And so then when you're playing it back,
Mm-hmm.
that's playing off of what has been recorded.
Okay.
And so to make sure that
Right.
it has encoded it, it wrote it, we should do a test.
Yeah.
test
Playback.
record.
Definitely.
Yeah, and that's why we have this monitor. So I'm gonna have Mark label this monitor, and this is not programmed, so don't mistake this for program. This is playback only. This is whatever's on that deck that you recorded. So you're not gonna necessarily see what your program is, you're gonna only see what's playing back off of the deck.
Okay.
And we did that so that you don't mistake program, because that was the problem I think we were having, is that program was being mistaken for recording. And when you played back the recording, then you were having missing audio files or having problems or the files weren't there. So that's what this monitor is strictly for. We shouldn't be setting anything else in your cameras or anything else. This is just going to be for monitoring playback. And like like I mentioned, the reason why we didn't hear the audio before is because the audio was everything's looped through this monitor. So when we play that,
During time people are recording, this is just be bars the whole time unless we do a playback.
it'll be whatever's being recorded.
Could we?
And so I just want to like show you guys, because the audio monitoring is different on this board. So we can hear it there and it's coming through there, but we want to know why is it not coming? Why can't we hear it through the main speakers, right? So there's two steps, and the reason I set it up this way is so that you can't create a feedback loop accidentally, and you can't play back into your recording. So the way you can keep it rolling.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
They're using that.
So the reason why we're not hearing it is because it's not getting recorded. So it's not going to any of these channels. You see all these red lights, that means they're all muted. It's not going to those channels. Where it's going is to this. I'm actually going to label it for you.
Where's the mute button though?
So these are only for the channels. So this is not coming to a channel. It's coming to what we call return on this board. And so I will label it because obviously it's kind of a random button right now. but you can see it right here. So it's going into return number 4. Now we'll actually label this right here. And it'll say record return. Or I'll label it like record return or record return. And you gotta turn this knob. And that button has to be down as well. And now you can see the levels, what we're saying, okay, but why can't we hear it? That's because the volume for these actual monitors themselves, the output volume is this dial that says control room.
What used to be a smoother process of entry now leaves migrants uncertain when or if they will even be able to cross the border. As a barricade of police stands before the border, large masses of
You can mark both.
You know what would be really helpful?
Okay, so for audio, we've got playback going here, and we have audio coming through these monitor speakers here as well as a visual monitor. But this monitor does have to be on because we're doing a loop through to get the audio to play back on the main speakers. Next, we'll go over to the mixing console over here. And we'll turn up this knob right. Notice we have no levels right now, and we'll turn this knob here, which is actually stereo aux return number 4, which will be labeled playback. That is currently the knob that needs to be turned up in order to see levels, which lost our source. Can
I usually just simplify it to control ready, floor ready, because they should be listening for it and they should know if they're in one or the other. But I mean, this is fine too. I just
Shorten it.
yeah. The fewer things I have to learn how to say, the more likely it is that they'll memorize it.
I have that out every time. I don't have it.
Yeah, I've minimized it down to 5 seconds, I think, or at least I'm going to this semester. And then I start with the slate, and then I do black because then the file is easier.
That makes
to
sense.
see. Yeah, and then
have proper audio.
you only really need 5 seconds if you want to edit it. You can edit it in post.
Although, but this is only in increments of
So this knob here has to be turned up first. The auxiliary return number 4 has to be turned up, so now we have levels here. But in order to hear that through the main monitors, we now have to turn this knob here labeled control room. And now we have audio. And now we have audio playing through both the monitor, the visual monitor speakers, and the control room monitors.
It'll be up 10 seconds on there, right? Because you can't. It's in increments of.
No, it's not. You put in whatever
I think we'd cut.
time you want.